Welcome to Full Scope, a podcast with two guys in their 20s, giving their perspective on the games that we love and the story behind it all. I'm your host, Wellington Burns, and my counterpart, Savon Morris, was not able to be here tonight, but I'm joined once again by Mr. Johnny Meads, a former linebacker in the NFL for the Houston Oilers and Washington Redskins. And I'm not sure, Mr. Johnny, this may be the fourth or fifth time, but you're becoming one of our most appeared guests on the show. But thanks for being on once again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Like I said, like you're saying, I remember when we did it the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking back, and it was around this time last year.
Yeah.
That we were talking about the
playoff
games and getting all these things lined up. Back then, Clemson, Alabama
again.
Clemson, Alabama again.
Yeah. And before we get to the matchup, there has been the thing with these two programs. I mean, they've been the powerhouses in the in the nation, and Alabama even longer. But these two for the last 4 years, it's been back and forth. Mm-hmm. And some, especially when Notre Dame was blown out and Oklahoma got off to a slow start, they were saying, Georgia should have been in, or Ohio State. But with these two teams constantly kind of being neck and neck, do you feel like it's bad for college football, I mean, in my opinion, I feel as though when you have the two best just at the peak of their powers, there's nothing better than to see them clash once again.
Yeah, it makes for good TV, good sports. I am in the same corner as you are. The fact is, I'm not a big Alabama fan, or I'm kind of a Clemson fan. I'm not gonna lie about that, but I think the fact that these two teams are the best teams, it still makes for good viewing. You wanna watch the two best go at it. There's a lot of teams that in the past in my career that I thought wasn't the best teams, or teams that I like, but nonetheless, it's a case where if they were the best teams, you like to see them go at it and see who's the one that's going to come out on top.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, because this is what you, even though some are saying there's not as much parity in college football now. Eventually, I mean, in every sport, it's cyclical. It's for one point in the NBA, it was Lakers and Celtics almost like every 3 or 4 years, and then that eventually faded away. It became Lakers Pistons and Lakers Bulls for 1 year. So these changes eventually will happen. But transitioning to the actual matchup, I mean, both teams, they have very solid quarterbacks. I mean, Trevor Lawrence hasn't looked like a freshman for most of the season. Had I think 387 yards, 3 touchdowns against Notre Dame, and connected with 9 different receivers. And then for Alabama, their offense really just kind of jolted Oklahoma, getting off to 20. I think they had 21 points before the end of the first quarter, and them just getting off to a sizzling start. But what matchup or just storyline in this game do you think is going to kind of make the difference? Because Clemson, they don't have Dexter Lawrence, but their defensive line is still extremely stout.
And you saw that that's what I was about to say. Their defense, even without their star player, they played exceptionally well in the semi game, and that's going to be, to me, the storyline again. And I think because of the fact that they're two teams that have seen each other before, that going back to that storyline, that adds to the build up. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it's going to be Clemson's defense against the Alabama offense that got off to such a great start against Oklahoma and Tua. So that, to me, is the biggest storyline. And of course, you got to flip that around with regard to the Alabama defense and Trevor Lawrence and the Clemson offense. So it's just going to be a really
back
good
and
show
forth
to watch. Yeah, I think it's going to be an excellent show. But once again,
I don't foresee what happened last year happening this year, because last year, like with Kelly Bryant, it was just he was more of a runner. But now Lawrence, he's the complete passer and can make explosive plays.
And you see the athletic ability that he has, the running ability. He's not just a statue back there. for almost 6'5", whatever he is, and a strong arm quarterback. He has, the total package. And, I just think it's just going to be an awesome game to sit down and watch. Alabama offense against Clemson defense and vice versa. I mean, you're just going to see. I think you're going to see a great show, and don't think it's going to be a one-sided affair at the least.
Yeah, and the one thing with Alabama, they have they have a deep core of running backs with Damian Harris, not Najee Harris, and just a ton of guys who are going to really pound the ball. But with Clemson, even with Travis Etienne, he's phenomenal. But I feel like there's going to be more reliance. I feel like Lawrence is going to have more responsibility in terms of making big plays consistently, because they can't go to the running, because Alabama, they're not going to be dominated at the line of scrimmage. No. Possibly how Alabama could do to Clemson with their running backs.
Right. I think similarly, the fact is, looking at Trevor Lawrence with what he's able to do as far as reading, a little bit better than, and what my viewing is, and my thought is on the process is that, Trevor can, read the defenses a little bit better and make, better decisions, where Tua is a little bit more, I'm gonna get to my first choice as a receiver. So therefore, you're gonna have Trevor Lawrence and throwing ETN in there as a focal point of their offense will be, again, something to watch. I think their offense is going to be something that's not going to be dominated by the Alabama defense, in my opinion.
Yeah. So in terms of the outcome, do you see, is it still too close for you to call, or is there one team you'd give a slight edge?
I'm a little bit. I'm not one of those guys who straddle the fence. Wellington, I pick a side basically, and I like Clemson. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not saying that they're the best team. That's my problem. I don't necessarily, go for who may be considered the best team. And don't get me wrong, Clemson, as much as they've been there and done that, they're a formidable team. They might not be seen as quite the powerhouse as Alabama is, but my leaning is towards Clemson, just because I'm biased that way, not because I think they're a better team, but just a team that I prefer to win. I mean, I like the fact that in looking at them, if you want to break it down just a little bit, I do like Trevor Lawrence better than I like Tua, as great as good a.
You have to wonder if Tua can stay healthy for this entire game.
That's a good point. So I like that. It's all about the quarterback. All these leagues are quarterback driven, and I think, and I don't know what you feel about it. I'd like to have your opinion, but maybe I'd give the edge because of their defensive backs too.
Yeah.
Along with their D line, I'd give the edge to Clemson on defense.
I would too.
Yeah. So
even without Dexter Lawrence, they're still so deep.
Absolutely, yes, without question. So it's going to be interesting, but that's my take on it.
Yeah, I would. I don't know. I'd go with Alabama slightly because I think their offense can out edge. I mean, can give them an edge over Clemson. Right. But I do think it's going to be a nail biter type of game, kind of like the one 2 years ago when Deshaun Watson was able to pull it off.
It was nip and tough. Yeah. You might be right. Like I said, I'm just doing it because I just like Clemson over Alabama as a program and all those kinds of things. But that doesn't say that I'm right, because I would love to have it be where, Oklahoma would have given Alabama a better game, and
they needed to at least get off to a better start.
Yes. So that's the deal on that.
Yeah.
I like the Clemson Tigers on, slightly.
Yeah. Transitioning to Mark Richt in Miami. this is a year where, I mean, he kind of mismanaged the quarterback situation, and the recruiting class really depreciated significantly, and they had a 4-game losing streak at one point. And in his 3 seasons, they were 26-13. 26-13 total over his 3 seasons, and they reached three bowl games. And last year, at one point they were high as number 2 in the AP poll, right. And this year they're 7-6. This year they were 7-6. And one of the interesting things with this Miami team and him, I mean, in September, I think according to ESPN stats and info, they got off to they were 10-1. Then after that, 16-12 and 1-3 in December and January. And so there's been a huge drop off kind of after the first couple of months of the season with Miami. So what were your thoughts on his departure? And do you feel as though this is a job where maybe a college or pro coach could see it as appealing, but also be with the pressure of kind of bringing them back to relevance will be too tough to kind of accept?
Well, that's what Mark Richt was there for. And I think it's going to be a tough get because of all the other coaching openings there are in the college ranks, even though it used to be a case where the Miami coaching job was appealing. But now I think the pressure of it to bring it back to relevance might be a little bit more daunting, a task for some of the coaches that are out there to come in there and make that program come back to where it once was. I think it's going to be a little bit more daunting of a task for a coach that they're looking at. Obviously, they're going to give it a try and see what happens. And I don't know who they have in mind or who they might have in mind, and what your thoughts on who could be the possible taker of that position. But I think when Mark Richt came in there and he did some things early, it was kind of coming back, but just like the previous coaches did, I thought it's always just like it was this year.
Yeah.
Especially first off, it's always like, oh, we got this thing going, and something always seemed to happen. Not overwhelming, but just not being able to get over the hump kind of thing. And it just seems to be where now it's just falling back into, is going to fall back into a situation where it's going to be hard to bring that program back to relevance, like a lot of people around here in the state of Florida want it to be.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the coaches who was mentioned as the next candidate, Mario Cristobal for Oregon, he could be another one. Butch Davis from FIU. So there are some coaches who could be in that mix, especially with Oregon. I think Justin Herbert declared that he's going to come back. So I think that will probably be something that will keep Mario Cristobal at Oregon, since Oregon, did show some very promising signs for a pretty good year for this season.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think it's just going to be interesting who's going to take the position and who's going to bring it back to relevance. But here in the state of Florida, as I said, you want Miami because you're looking at Miami, Florida State to be a team of relevance. Miami and Florida State being in the ACC and the SEC for Florida, you want them in that mix to maybe challenge and be like we're talking about in a earlier segment to bring some teams back into that mix with the college football bowl series.
Yeah, and but before we transition to the NFL, there was a report today that Justin Fields decided to transfer to Ohio State, and I think we were talking about this earlier in the year, who we thought Georgia would go to. Would they stay with Jake Fromm, or would they go to Justin Fields? And they decided to stay with Fromm, and he got them to a close, almost to a SEC championship win.
Right.
But what are your thoughts on Fields transferring? And do you think it's one of those decisions where he felt as though he kind of was tired of waiting and felt as though he was ready for the starting gig, or do you think it was one of those things where it just was kind of the best decision for his future?
Typically, looking at it from the quarterback's position, because we can talk about Jalen Hurts as well as Kelly Bryant, who took two different paths. But I just think it's a case where the program, as Clemson did and as Alabama did, the programs just see a better quarterback, as you saw in the Fromm kid from last year.
Right.
That you think that it's going to be something that they can hang their hat on, and they have. So it's just the best decision for that program, and the quarterback has to make the best decision for them to go on, and because they're formidable players, all of them are, but the quarterback, I mean the program is making the best decision at the quarterback position for that program.
Yeah, definitely. Transitioning to the NFL, before we get to some of the wild card matchups, Pittsburgh they were able to beat Cincinnati last week, but missed the playoffs for the first time I think since 2013. And there was a report that Antonio Brown is demanding a trade, and the organization's been pretty critical of his recent behavior, and he's 30 at the peak of his career, and he was in a kind of a scuffle in a disagreement with Ben Roethlisberger, then missed out on the team meeting Saturday night and decided not to play Sunday against the Bengals. And this team, I mean, they got off to a 6-2 start, and then kind of nosedive and missed the playoffs by not having since Baltimore was able to beat Cleveland, which they needed the other outcome to happen. So in terms of Pittsburgh's situation, I mean, Ben Roethlisberger, 37, an aging quarterback, and now you have the Le'Veon Bell situation was constantly hovering over them for the first part of the season, and now the Antonio Brown situation. What are your thoughts on this team's kind of future, and have they kind of already reached their peak, because this is a team that has a ton of talent but hasn't been able to overachieve yet?
Wellington, that kind of thing is bound to happen. It would have been a great story had they had all the adversity that they've had with Le'Veon Bell starting off and end up making the playoffs and doing well. It would have been a great story with the things that happened in Pittsburgh and all that kind of stuff. But my take is this, that it's bound to happen when you have that kind of turmoil. As good a coach as they have there, the coaching staff and the situation that's there as far as how Pittsburgh does it with their coaching, it's bound to happen in terms of when you have that kind of adversity, I guess it could be termed. Something's bound to happen, and you're not going to continue to make it to where you want to make it because of the drawback and the kind of what do you call it? Just the off-field antics. Like starting with the Le'Veon, those types of things. Starting with the Le'Veon Bell situation. But I'm going to say something about Antonio Brown specifically. I scouted him at Central Michigan, and he was a hothead. He always has been. It was almost a case where some people, if you go back and some of the scouts and some of the teams were to look at their scouting reports, was probably thinking about taking him off their board. And he could have been a higher draft pick, first of all, had he gone to a better team because of his return ability when he came out of Central Michigan, and his overall play and athletic ability. But he was always a hothead, Wellington. That was and people don't know that. And the thing about him is he goes to a team, right? And I'm gonna say this about him: had he been a first-round draft pick, you would have had more problems out of it. He would have been a Terrell
Owens.
Terrell Owens type. I promise you. He had that kind of an attitude.
Wow.
I feel that because that's been the kind of thing that's been festering there. But you see him as a third-round pick, I think he was.
Yeah.
And he ascended to being the good player that he is with Pittsburgh. And he had some problems early on with his attitude and things like that. But those types of things, because he's not the top-notch player that he is now, he wasn't that then. It wasn't as as talked about. But now that he's ascended to this position, they had all the adversity and the things that didn't turn out right for him in times past. He's that kind of guy. I mean, he's been a good player, but he can be that kind of guy. I mean, from a scouting standpoint, there's not many of these guys that are in the league now because they're younger, and I've been out of it for a little while that I know. But I remember this kid, and I remember interviewing him at the combine. What they do, coming from a smaller school, they try to humble themselves and see how high they can get, and who would take a bite on them. And he's that kind of guy. Good, you know what I mean. He's not I'm not saying he's like
not toxic.
Yeah, but he has some issues. Yeah. And that's bared itself out in what's happening here with him of late.
Yeah, and I think when we look back at the Steelers season, there's some of the losses are going to stand out more in terms of what kept them from the postseason. I mean, they had the 16-point lead against the Chargers at halftime and then blew it, and then the Broncos lost, and then the Raiders lost. Do you feel as though that in terms of this year, it's them losing to teams that they shouldn't, and maybe being in games that like they almost, you can make the case they should have beaten New Orleans, but they came up short with that game. But do you feel as though this is a year where they kind of, the losses to the inferior team is kind of what caught up to them in terms of keeping them from the postseason? Without
question, you can, especially if you can look at those so readily. I mean, you're talking about losing to a team like Pittsburgh, like Oakland. You're losing to a team like the Broncos, who wasn't that formidable of a team compared to a team like Pittsburgh. Now, you can debate the Charger loss, and even though they had the lead and things like that, but those two games are games when you lose to teams that you shouldn't lose to, you always go back to that. I mean, that's been the formula when you look at a schedule and say, okay, we can. I used to do that. All the teams that I played on, in the locker room, in the meeting room, you're looking at it. The coaches are looking at it. These are teams we can beat, and the other teams we gotta really bring it.
Yeah.
If we're gonna play well against them. But if you're supposed to beat a team, that's the teams you're supposed to beat to get you where you need to be. And them not doing that is without question the reason why they're not in the playoffs. Not waiting on the Ravens to beat the
Browns. Yeah.
Browns. You can't do that. You got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like at that point, they weren't in control of their own destiny.
Exactly.
And I watched that Browns-Ravens game. The Browns probably should have won that game, but at the same point, you can't put yourself in a position where you're relying on what Baker Mayfield could do and driving them down to get a field goal. So yeah, I feel like that was definitely the decider in that. Transitioning to some of the wild card matchups, I think the most interesting NFC matchup, even though the Bears and Eagles is intriguing, but the Seattle-Dallas one is a pretty interesting matchup, and Dallas has been 7-1 in their last 8, and I believe they're 5th in running defense, but 16th in pass defensive efficiency. And the Seahawks' main calling card is Wilson has been a great deep ball thrower, passer this year. And even though they're a great run team against the Chiefs, that's kind of how they were able to close out that game, was some of the deep ball throws Wilson was making. But with the momentum Dallas has been carrying, and also the savviness that Russell Wilson brings to this, even on the road, and probably the coaching edge I would give Seattle What are your thoughts on this matchup?
I totally agree that not only the deep ball throwing of Russell Wilson, and we touched on who I think that is the best target for Russell Wilson going deep. The guy out of Kansas with the little Caesar. We talked about him last
Lockett.
time.
Lockett, yeah.
We talked about him last time. He's the guy, I'm telling you. Unlike the guy that here out of Gulf Breeze,
Doug Baldwin.
Yeah, Baldwin, he is a big target, great receiver, but Tyler Lockett is his guy. And they got that great running attack when you can run the football and do the play action pass, and that's what's going to get you the deep balls, especially with the kind of receivers they have and the kind of balls that Russell Wilson throws. That is going to be a great matchup. I really see it where the Seattle team coming down and going into Dallas is going to be, a huge challenge, but I think it's one that they can overcome because those guys aren't afraid of anything. It's not the Legion of Boom kind of thing, but they are.
They're sixth in offensive efficiency. They have the offense this time.
I know they're working with the offense, and Russell Wilson. I think he's a guy that's kind of in his prime, and he's just working. He's working a lot of magic, man. And not to take anything away from Dallas. I mean, they played well here of late. I think they, are going to obviously be a great challenge for Seattle. But I think Seattle.
I like Seattle on this one.
Yes,
I like Seattle
because of their momentum. They've had such great momentum. When you thought that Kansas City was going to go up there. Which I did. I don't know about you, Wellington.
I did.
I thought, right. Russell Wilson and their running game and their passing efficiency and all those kinds of things. I thought sure that Mahomes was gonna just show out up there, and they beat them along with their other wins along the way. You thinking, well, Seattle was not gonna do it, and they end up doing it, and so it's gonna be intriguing. I hope Dallas wins. I'm gonna give you that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think.
Are you a Dallas fan?
I'm not a huge fan.
Okay.
But I think I like the team, and once again, just like we were talking about with the college, I like Clemson better than I like Alabama. I like Dallas better than
because of their defense.
Yeah, but especially those young guys, those linebackers, man. The young linebackers, they can play. I just like the team a little bit better. I like Dak Prescott a little bit better than I like Russell Wilson, if you can believe that.
Really?
Yes, I do. And so I like Dallas. I like Dallas to win, but I don't know that they will.
Yeah, and one of the I think kind of the staggering statistics is Dallas is 1-5 when teams rush over 100 on them, and
wow.
Seattle, they're poised. They have the running attack to do that, and so that's something that can definitely be a threat for them.
But what on the flip side of that, we just spoke about their defense too. Now Dallas's defense, they can set it up because remember the Dallas, not the defensive coordinator, but the guy who calls the plays comes from Seattle,
right?
So it might be. I'm not sure. I don't know about Dallas, the Seattle running game against that defense. I think the defense can really play well and end up.
Yeah, they have a stout run defense. The Cowboys.
Yeah. So that, along with the fact that I kind of like Dallas over Seattle, just makes it the case where I think they're going to win.
Yeah. But with Dallas and Jason Garrett, do you pretty much think like, I think midway through the season, I felt as though he'd probably be gone, but now, 10 wins, they win the division. Do you think his security, his job security,
no,
you don't think so?
I think he's always it's always a great chance that he's going to be gone at any time, and the only thing that keeps him there is, well, he gets one more win than you think he's going to get, or he does.
Maybe that's why he started Dak Prescott.
Yeah, but
last week,
he is always on the hot seat, in my opinion.
Right.
Until and I don't think he ever will, get to the point where he wins Super Bowls and go 12-5 or something like that. 12-6 or whatever
12-4.
Yeah. 12-4. Yeah. He's not gonna be, because he always ends up having to deal with a team like Philadelphia, and when they're good, a team like New York, and they don't play as well, and he's gonna end up being on. Hey.
Yeah. It definitely seems as though, just like you said, he's always on the hot seat.
Yeah.
It to me doesn't even change that they won the division. He still could be on the hot seat because of just some of the coaching decisions he makes late in situations. That could be the downfall here too.
Right. The way they play at points in time is like, dude, how do you you start thinking, how do you keep your job? And people, people are playing a whole lot better than you, or coaching a whole lot better than you, getting fired, and you keep your job. I don't know. I don't see. He's always going to be on the hot seat. I don't know what the owner's going to do, when he's going to pull the trigger, but it seems like he's always got the gun cocked.
Yeah. Before we move to the Chargers and Ravens, me and Savon were talking about Nick Foles getting back to the postseason again.
Mm-hmm.
They're obviously facing, the best defense in the league in Chicago. How much do you think is the kind of the going back and forth, the seesaw of do we just stay with Wentz, or do we go with Foles? Like, what would Foles have to do in terms of maybe switching that, or do you think it's Wentz all the way? Because I still feel as though they would go with Wentz.
Well, I do think that even though they're saying it, just my opinion, I don't know that, because I like Foles and the team likes Foles, right? I think if he and I'm sorry that it has to come down to that, but if he's able to do what he did last year, and now he's not doing it, like, I think he's got to do it from the position that he's doing it now. I think he's kind of injured, and it's even he had to come on a little bit earlier than he did last year. I think it was the case last year. He didn't have a couple of games under his belt, did he?
No.
He came to, this year he had a couple of games under his belt. Regular season games, then he's now starting the playoffs, and if he does that and does what he did last year, and I think just get them to the big game, I think and you like Wentz, right? But at some point in time, you have to see, because this kid is not.
Can he stay healthy? Can Wentz stay healthy?
Yeah, and Foles, on the other hand, is not. You're saying he's a franchise quarterback, and he's done what he did up to his, injury of his rookie year. So he's, in essence, when that's the case, Wellington, you haven't done anything.
Right.
You did that, but that's not anything in this league, in the NFL.
It's like the Eli Manning thing. Like, outside of the 2 Super Bowl runs, what has he actually done?
What are you doing? Yeah, what are you doing? What are you doing? So he's not done anything. So with that being said, I do not think that he's going to be someone that that's going to drive that team, going to be behind the wheel of that team going forward if Foles were to do what he did last year or come close to it.
Right.
I think eventually they have to say, okay, Carson, just, you be the backup now. You know what I mean? That's my opinion.
Yeah. If he was able to get to like an NFC Championship or even a Super Bowl, again, I definitely think those talk, Super Bowl appearance. I definitely think those talks would come back again. Transitioning to the Chargers and Ravens, the Ravens they've been on a very strong tear the last 7 games. Jackson has been
Wellington Burns.
The floor is yours. The floor is yours. This is your guy.
That's my guy. You remember we talked about this
yes.
when I was on your show before.
Right.
I said when we were talking about these quarterbacks and you know the ones that Darnold and all of that and Rosen and all of that. I said this guy is going to be your guy.
Yeah.
And I like to. I mean, I'm not saying I'm right about a lot of stuff, but as a former scout, you like.
I couldn't leave this game off because you told me this. You predicted this.
This is what I told you would happen. Because in this league, let's go talking about this. In this league, this is what it's going to. Not like because he can't throw a lick in this league yet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jackson. Now he can run it.
That's what's so hard to prepare for. It's the run because I mean he's averaging the most carries for a quarterback since 1970. This is completely different.
It's amazing, and you're able to do it in this league because that's what it's going to. And so back to your point, I guess you're trying to see who's gonna. I'm looking at the fact that they played, you know, here recently in the last part of the season, and they were able to, you know. I don't think it's going to happen this time, however. I'm going to say that if we want to talk about that. As good as
you like the Chargers in this one?
I do. I really do.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to go back across because they're playing in they won the division, right? Having done that, what they did.
The Ravens.
So they're going to have to play. They're playing in Baltimore.
Right.
That makes a difference. That makes a difference. Because I know even though the Chargers are the better team, right?
Yeah, the Chargers are the better team.
In terms of wins and losses and in terms of, you know, their personnel.
I think this is the team they did not want to see in terms of the wild card. Because they have the better record, and this is not the most ideal matchup for them in the wild card.
No doubt. And so I think with that being the case, you know, they're going to – I still – think in spite of the fact they're playing them in Baltimore, the Bolts are going to be, you know, the winner of this one. At least that's the way I see it. I think they're not gonna having looked at the game, and that's what they do in this league too. You got to have that most recent tape of this guy, right? And the Chargers they don't have a bad defense, right?
No, I think they're 10th. 10th in the defensive efficiency.
So they're going to be able to prepare for, you know, what they weren't able to do as well as they should have in the previous game, especially seeing it was so recent. It's going to be. I think the Chargers are going to get the better of this one on the second go round. As much as I like Lamar Jackson and the running and the story and the thing that I thought would happen with them, I just think the Chargers are gonna win.
Yeah, and I'd actually give the edge to Baltimore just because Phillip Rivers has not looked as good down the stretch. I mean, he's had 6 interceptions in the last 3 games, and at one point in the season, he was looking like a viable MVP candidate.
Right.
And that has kind of, you know, waned down the stretch. But if this is the thing with the Chargers, if the Chargers win, I think they'll at least have to get to a strong start because with them, they're usually playing from behind in a lot of these games. And we haven't seen them in the postseason for so long. And when they were in the postseason, it was them getting off to slow starts instead of getting off to a better one. But this is the Chargers. I believe they're 10th in passing defensive efficiency and 16th in takeaways. Do you feel as though the Chargers are going to have to kind of trust in the run game more because the last time I think Rivers threw for at least like 45 times and they didn't have as much of a balanced attack.
And not only that, Gordon wasn't at full strength.
Right.
Didn't he play that game? Was that the game that he missed?
That was the one he missed.
Yeah. So you don't have him in there, which is why, you know, he had to throw so much. And remember his leading receiver had gotten hurt as well. So I think those things are things to consider with that. Them running, passing so much, and their passing game not being as efficient as it should have been. I think they're going to be better prepared, Wellington, and it's going to be a different game. Like I said, with that defense able to prepare for Lamar Jackson and Phillip Rivers, I think playing a little bit better than he played last game, and Gordon playing at the running back position is going to be better for them too. And as I said, just the defense of San Diego, they're Los Angeles now.
Yeah, Los Angeles.
Of the Chargers,
it's always an adjustment.
Yeah, of the Chargers is going to be a little bit better, I think. Well, not better than the Ravens defense now, because Ravens defense is they're a heck of a group.
Yes,
but they're going to play better against Baltimore's offense.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to be the key there.
Yeah, and before we wrap up, just looking down the road in this postseason, in both conferences, which team do you have the most confidence in making a deep run in the postseason? I know New Orleans has home field and Kansas City, and I kind of envision it being hard for any team to beat New Orleans, but in both conferences, like, who do you kind of have the most confidence going down the stretch and making a deep run?
Well, because everybody is looking at New Orleans as a the team to beat in the NFC, and everything has to go through them. I do like the Rams and the NFC to give New Orleans a bit of a run. Yeah. I don't know if it'll happen, but that's the team I would pick. And the NFC, of course, the AFC, of course, is the intriguing team, right? Is Kansas City, because of Mahomes.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you might have a different one, and throw that out there and let me hear it. But that's the team that I want to see. Not that because they can implode in a hurry. As good a team as they are, they can implode in a hurry in the postseason. But that's the thing that I'm looking at. I'm looking at them, even though they don't have the quality defense.
Their offense has been consistent the entire season. It's never taken a backseat.
Right, and so if they can have it where Mahomes can ride Mahomes to the maybe to the the championship. That'd be great. That's the team I'm looking at. And I'm not a great Kansas City fan. I just want to see, because everybody has got to be on the Mahomes bandwagon, right?
Right.
So
I would think so.
How far he can take them.
The presumptive MVP.
Yes, exactly. So now, and don't get me wrong. Just if we can just talk about him for a second, he is a heck of a player now.
Yes,
Wellington. We haven't talked about him because of whatever reason, but this kid, I sit here and marvel.
Right.
And I talk to my girls and I are sitting here watching football because they're great football fans, and from the standpoint of what they don't know about what this kid is able to do. Oh my God, it is phenomenal when you sit down and study him like I do as a scout. I enjoy the game, but then I sit back and I marvel at what a quarterback is able to do at points in time, and it is phenomenal, the things that he's able to do.
Yeah,
which is why I like to see him go far.
Yeah, at only 23, he's doing this. 50 plus touchdowns, 5,000 yards. Honestly, I like the AFC. To me, it's more wide open than it's been in the past. But Kansas City's offense, I just trust it more than any other team right now in the conference. And I think them having home field advantages is going to be the edge. And no other team has really been able to distance themselves, because New England, they haven't looked they haven't looked as consistent. And Brady has shown some. I'm never going to count out Brady, but he has at times looked like a 41-year-old quarterback.
Right. I know what you're saying, and it, honestly, there's nobody else. If you look at it, we talk about the Ravens and their little deal, and I mean, we kind of talked about the Chargers, but if you look at the AFC as a whole, there's no team that's going to, like stand up and wow you, like Kansas City is, right?
Yeah.
So that's why you have to go with them, and that's why I picked those guys as far as the AFC. And like I said, taking out.
So you're picking a Kansas City Rams rematch?
I don't know. That's the way it seems, right? But that's the teams that kind of intrigue me. I'm like, as I said, I'm taking out. If you just exclude the Saints, because they're on a different level, man.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you got to go to that dome, and I've said this before. I played in that place. It is nothing like you want to be in as an opposing team. It's nothing. You don't want to be there at all. It's now somebody would say, well, as a competitive person and a team, well, you got to go in there and play, right?
Right.
But you don't want to go there, man. You can say, I'm telling you, you can say what you want. You don't want to go there and play. So that's why I take them out, and I think they're going to be. They're the team to beat without question. And when they get beat, I won't be mad, but they are a heck of a team to go down to New Orleans and play.
Yeah, I would definitely think so. I mean, to me, the only quarterback I think in the conference that I think would actually put a scare in the Saints is a Russell Wilson type, because that's the type of quarterback you have to have, like a dual threat quarterback who has experience, has won a Super Bowl. To me, that's the only quarterback I think that could actually neutralize what they do. I would still say the Saints. I would pick them over any team in the NFC currently, but that's the only quarterback I see giving them a huge threat so far.
That's a good point. Yeah, I totally agree, because he's playing so well, and they have such a good formula. The running game, and then the deep threat passing game. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Johnny, thank you for being back on it. It was a pleasure as always.
Mr. Wellington Burns, thank you once again. I'm looking forward to doing it again. I think we almost got this thing down. I think
almost down.
So we can do it anytime now. Hopefully there will be no more glitches and no more issues, and I can be on ready to go, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. We're welcome. We'll talk about this some more. All right.
Yes, sir. Well, that wraps it up for tonight. I'm your host, Wellington Burns, and this has been Full Scope. See you later.